A powerful black billionaire was humiliated and discriminated against simply because of her skin color. But within just a few minutes, her resilience and intelligence forced those responsible for the injustice to face unimaginable consequences. This story not only shocked the passengers on the flight, but also delivered a massive blow to an airline and became an unforgettable lesson for the entire world. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more empowering and meaningful stories. The plane was preparing for takeoff under the soft golden light of the late afternoon. Passengers queued up, each carrying their own stories. Among them was Ava Carter, an elderly billionaire stepping aboard with a calm demeanor. Her hair was silver, but her face radiated sharpness and confidence. Her outfit was so understated that no one would guess she was one of the world's wealthiest and most influential women. A simple white shirt, neatly pressed black trousers, and a worn cloth bag. Ava never felt the need to flaunt her wealth. She walked through the economy-class cabin, unfazed by curious glances, and headed straight to first class. In her hand, she held a small notebook and her boarding pass. Once seated, Ava gave a polite smile to the passenger beside her and carefully placed her bag in the overhead compartment. Miranda Scott, a veteran flight attendant, moved through the first-class cabin with an observant eye, always proud of her ability to maintain order on board. When she saw Ava, Miranda paused slightly. Ava didn't resemble the usual first-class passengers. There were no expensive suits, luxury watches, or designer bags. Her simplicity sparked a suspicion that even Miranda couldn't fully explain. Miranda stopped at Ava's seat, striving to maintain a polite demeanor but unable to hide her hesitation. "Ma'am," she said with a fleeting professional smile, "I'm sorry, but I need to double-check. Your ticket." Ava looked up, her gaze calm but piercing. "Of course," she said, gently retrieving the ticket from her shirt pocket and handing it to Miranda. Miranda glanced at the ticket and pressed her lips together. First class, valid, but she couldn't let it go. An uneasy feeling, or perhaps prejudice, compelled her to add, "Please wait here while I verify this information." Ava said nothing, merely nodding slightly and taking the ticket back from Miranda. She opened her notebook and continued jotting down notes as Miranda walked toward the service desk nearby, whispering with a colleague. Occasionally, Miranda's eyes darted back toward Ava, as if unable to relax. From her seat, Ava could clearly sense the furtive glances and distant murmurs. She remained composed, though a faint crease appeared on her forehead. This wasn't the first time she'd faced baseless judgments. Sometimes she smiled bitterly to herself, knowing that no amount of success could erase the prejudices deeply ingrained in society. But she also knew that reacting impulsively was never the answer. Miranda returned, now with a renewed sense of confidence. "Ma'am, it appears there's been a mistake with your ticket. I'm going to have to ask you to move to the economy cabin," she said, her tone colder than before, her courtesy gone. Ava looked up, a distinct frown appearing for the first time. "A mistake? My ticket is valid, and I booked this seat weeks ago." Her voice was steady but firm. "Yes, but I'm afraid this seat isn't appropriate." Miranda hesitated but quickly regained her stern stance. "If you refuse to move, I'll have to call security." The tension in the first-class cabin became palpable. A few passengers turned to look, whispering among themselves. Ava felt the weight of every gaze but refused to let her emotions take control. After a moment of silence, she stood, picked up her bag, and said, "I won't interfere with your work. Ava made her way to the economy cabin, maintaining the same poise as if she were entering a high-stakes meeting. But, in her mind, plans were already forming. She knew she couldn't let this incident pass unnoticed. Miranda watched her leave, a faint sense of satisfaction creeping into her mind. But what Miranda didn't realize was that in just a few minutes, Ava Carter would quietly turn the situation around in ways no one could have imagined. Ava sat down in an economy-class seat, positioned in the middle of a narrow row where space was significantly reduced compared to first class. Around her, a few passengers glanced over curiously, but no one said a word. Ava, as usual, maintained a calm expression, but her sharp eyes scanned every detail of the cabin. She opened her bag, pulled out her phone, and quickly typed a message. "There's an issue. I need everyone to act immediately. Ensure the response team gets this information before the plane lands." After hitting send, she put her phone back into her bag, resting her hands on her knees while sitting upright. To an observer, Ava seemed to be relaxing, but inside she was formulating a clear plan. Ava was not just an ordinary passenger who had been wronged. She was a woman who had spent decades overcoming prejudice and discrimination, someone who knew exactly how to wield her power to effect change. Meanwhile, in first class, Miranda continued with her duties. She felt a sense of satisfaction after handling the unusual situation. However, an odd feeling lingered in her mind. She noticed a few passengers in first class who had witnessed the entire incident seemed displeased. This unsettled her momentarily, but Miranda quickly brushed it off, reassuring herself. It was the right decision. Everything will be fine. Back in economy class, Clara, a younger flight attendant, approached Ava with a glass of water in hand. Her eyes reflected genuine concern. "Ma'am, I'm sorry if there was anything that made you uncomfortable," Clara said gently. Is there anything I can do for you?" Ava looked up at Clara and smiled. That smile wasn't just a thank you. It was also an acknowledgement of rare kindness in such a situation. "It's fine. You're very thoughtful. It was just a misunderstanding," Ava replied. Clara nodded, but she sensed the situation wasn't as simple as Ava made it seem. In first class, Clara had overheard some murmurs among other passengers, and now Ava's calm demeanor only heightened her feeling that this story was far from over. Ava opened her notebook and wrote down a short but meaningful phrase. "Small actions, big consequences. Let this be the last time." She closed the notebook and sat still, as if she had completely accepted the situation. But this wasn't surrender. It was part of Ava's strategy, waiting until everyone thought she had done nothing at all. In first class, Miranda stood near the beverage station, whispering to Dennis, a senior flight attendant. "She's in economy now," Miranda said smugly. "I don't think she really belongs here. Doesn't look like the first-class type, does she?" Dennis frowned, displeased with Miranda's attitude. "Miranda, I don't know what you're thinking, but don't let prejudice guide you. Are you sure? What you did was right." Miranda scoffed. "It's just a gut feeling. I trust my instincts." Dennis shook his head, his tone firm. Gut feelings aren't a reason to violate a passenger's rights, especially someone who paid for first-class service. Be careful. People like her, you never know who they really are. Dennis's words gave Miranda pause for a moment, but she quickly reassured herself that everything was fine. "She's not doing anything," Miranda thought. "Let her sit there. That's it." A few minutes later, in economy class, Ava picked up her phone again. She made a brief call, her voice calm but clear. Hello, it's me. Yes, I'm still on the flight. I need the response team to be ready. And please, make sure we have a meeting as soon as I land. This isn't just a personal matter. When the call ended, Ava looked out the window. She could feel the discreet glances of some nearby passengers. There was empathy in their eyes, but Ava didn't care. She didn't need pity. What she needed was action. Meanwhile, Miranda started to feel uneasy. Clara entered first class and spoke quietly. "Miranda, I think you should be careful. She doesn't seem like the type of person you'd want to mess with. It looks like she knows something we don't." Miranda exhaled sharply, trying to appear unbothered. But inside, Clara and Dennis's words had begun to gnaw at her. Who exactly was Ava Carter, and why was she so composed? As the flight progressed, everything seemed outwardly calm, but Miranda had no idea that Ava was quietly orchestrating a shift, step by step. The golden sunlight of the late afternoon streamed through the small airplane windows, casting a tranquil yet tense atmosphere. Ava Carter, calmly seated in the middle row of the economy cabin, gazed intently out at the sky. Her eyes, serene as a still lake yet profoundly deep, concealed an undercurrent of emotion unnoticed by others. Outside, the mood on the plane subtly shifted. Some passengers continued chatting, reading, or watching movies, but those near Ava couldn't help but glance at her. Her presence, simple, silent, but commanding, made them sense something unusual. A man, seated across from Ava, leaned slightly forward and whispered, "Are you all right? It seems unfair they asked you to change seats." Ava turned to him and offered a faint smile. "Thank you for your concern. I'm fine. What matters isn't that it happened to me, but ensuring it doesn't happen to anyone else." Her succinct yet meaningful reply left the man speechless, nodding instead as if acknowledging that the woman before him was far more significant than he had imagined. Up front, Miranda Scott stood in the galley near first class, trying to focus on her work. She had filled the drink trays, double-checked the service list, yet an unease lingered in her mind. The disapproving glances from some first-class passengers, clearly unhappy with her handling of the situation, haunted her. The initial satisfaction of asking Ava to move had been replaced by an unnamed discomfort. Leaning against the counter, Miranda pretended to adjust her handkerchief, but in truth, she was trying to steady herself. Just then, the chime of the intercom phone rang. Dennis, Miranda's seasoned colleague, picked up the call. He nodded a few times, his gaze sharpening, then handed the phone to Miranda. "It's for you," he said gravely. "Sounds serious." Miranda furrowed her brow, stepping forward to take the receiver. "This is Miranda Scott," she said, keeping her tone professional. "Hello, Ms. Scott. This is the airline's executive office," a cold voice responded. Miranda froze, anxiety welling up in her chest. "We've just received a direct complaint from passenger Ava Carter on your flight. Can you explain why she was relocated from first class?" Miranda was stunned. I thought her ticket had an issue. I checked and didn't think she was eligible for first class," she stammered, realizing even as she spoke how weak her excuse sounded. The line went silent for a moment before the voice continued, now sharper. "Do you have any idea who Ava Carter is?" Miranda swallowed hard. "No, I don't." "She's not just a first-class passenger," the voice replied, each word cutting like a blade. "She's a major shareholder and a member of our airline's board of directors." Miranda's face went pale. I didn't know," she stuttered, gripping the phone tightly. "I was acting on instinct. Instinct is not a valid reason for altering the seating of a paying first-class passenger, especially someone like Ms. Carter, the voice retorted firmly. You are required to submit a detailed report immediately after the plane lands. And a piece of advice. From now until touchdown, do not do anything else that might escalate the situation. Miranda hung up, her heart pounding. Dennis stood nearby, silently observing. After a moment, he broke the tension. I warned you, Miranda. I didn't know, Miranda muttered, her voice trembling. She didn't look like a first-class passenger. Dennis raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms. And what does a first-class passenger look like, Miranda? Expensive watches? Designer bags? This is one passenger you don't want to mess with. You've made a huge mistake. Miranda bit her lip, her gaze involuntarily drifting toward the economy cabin. Ava still sat there, her expression unchanging. Her composure only made Miranda more anxious. She couldn't read what the woman was thinking. But one thing was clear. Ava Carter was not someone who would let this slide. In the economy cabin, Ava received a brief message from her assistant. The matter has been reported to the board. They are addressing it. She folded her phone, her expression calm yet resolute. What needed to be done had already been set in motion. To Ava, this incident was no longer personal. It was an opportunity to send a larger, more profound message about the biases still present in society and the necessity of addressing them. A young flight attendant, Clara, passed by and placed a glass of water on Ava's table. If you need anything, please let me know, she said sincerely. Ava nodded, appreciating the rare kindness in the situation. Thank you. You're doing your job very well. The simple compliment brought a shy smile to Clara's face. Meanwhile, Miranda stood in the galley, her hands trembling as she held a tray of drinks. The oppressive atmosphere closed in on her, every passing moment a form of torment. Her actions had spiraled beyond her control, and Miranda began to realize she hadn't just inconvenienced a passenger. She might be facing consequences far graver than she had anticipated. Ava continued looking out the window, her gaze distant yet focused. She didn't need to do anything more. The wheels of change were already turning, and Miranda had no idea just how monumental her mistake truly was. The airplane touched down gently, its wheels rolling along the runway with a steady hum. Inside the cabin, the deceleration of the aircraft seemed to be the only sound filling the air. Miranda stood near the galley door, gripping a tray of water tightly, trying to steady her nerves. But the tension in her chest felt like a storm, raging relentlessly. She couldn't shake the words from the call she received from the executive office. She's not just a first-class passenger. She's a major shareholder and a member of the board. In the economy cabin, Ava Carter sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the window, as calm as if nothing unusual had happened. But those around her could sense something different. A man seated nearby spoke softly, his voice filled with empathy. I'm so sorry for what you've been through. It seems so unfair. Ava turned to him, her eyes reflecting a calm composure. Thank you, she said, a polite smile gracing her lips. Sometimes it's not what happens to us that matters, but how we respond to it. I hope this never happens again. Not to me, and not to anyone. The man nodded, choosing not to say more. Ava's confidence in her words made it clear she wasn't someone who could be easily subdued. Meanwhile, Miranda was doing her best to regain her composure. She took a deep breath, deciding to face the situation head-on. With a glass of white wine and a glass of water in hand, she walked past the first-class section toward the economy cabin where Ava was seated. Each step felt heavy, as if every stride was a reminder of the mistake she had just made. She could feel every pair of eyes in the cabin watching her. Ava looked up as Miranda approached. Her eyes showed no anger, no disdain. Instead, they carried the expression of someone waiting for a satisfactory explanation. Miranda stopped, holding the tray of drinks. "Mrs. Carter," she began, forcing a smile that failed to mask her anxiety. "I want to sincerely apologize for the inconvenience I caused you. It was a misunderstanding, and I deeply regret it." Ava regarded her for a long moment. Her silence was sharp, cutting through any justification Miranda might have offered. Finally, she gave a slight nod. "A misunderstanding," she repeated, her voice light but weighted with significance. "Do you realize that misunderstandings like this are often more than personal incidents? They're symptoms of something larger." Miranda hesitated, unsure how to respond. I didn't think of it that way," she stammered. Ava's tone remained calm but firm. "You didn't think so? Do you know what those around me, those who witnessed how you treated me, will think? They'll think that someone like me doesn't belong in first class, and that doesn't just harm me, it shapes how they perceive themselves. What do you think about that?" Miranda couldn't answer. She lowered her gaze, feeling as though she were being judged. Ava's words weren't loud, but each one struck a painful chord, leaving a deep impression Miranda couldn't erase. At last, Ava took the glass of water from Miranda's tray but left the wine behind. "Thank you for your apology," she said. "I trust the airline will take the appropriate steps to ensure this doesn't happen again." Miranda forced a smile, but it was crooked and devoid of life. "Yes, ma'am," she whispered. Then she turned and walked quickly back to the galley, her mind a whirlwind of anxiety. The passengers began to rise as the seatbelt sign turned off, preparing to disembark. Ava remained seated, unhurried. She waited until the aisle was nearly empty before standing gracefully, adjusting her simple handbag and stepping out of her seat. Clara, a young flight attendant who had previously assisted Ava, stood near the exit, her expression laced with concern. As Ava approached, Clara spoke softly with genuine sincerity. "Mrs. Carter, if there's anything I can do to make you more comfortable." Ava paused, looking at Clara, and offered a warm smile. "You've done very well, Clara," she said. "Remember, how we treat others is a reflection of who we are." Clara nodded, feeling a sense of relief and encouragement from the compliment given by someone she quietly admired. Miranda stood near the plane's exit, trying to maintain a professional demeanor as she bid farewell to the passengers. But when Ava approached, Miranda felt her heart skip a beat. Ava stopped, meeting her eyes, not with anger, but with an unmistakable authority. "We'll be speaking again," Ava said, her voice steady and firm. Miranda couldn't muster a reply. She simply nodded, her heart filled with fear and regret. Ava walked past her with an air of calm confidence, as though she had been in control of the situation all along. And she had. As Ava stepped off the plane, 2 security officers appeared at the door. They looked at Miranda with serious expressions. "Miss Miranda Scott?" one of them asked. "Yes," Miranda replied, her voice barely audible. "We need you to come with us to provide information about certain incidents on this flight," the other officer said. Miranda felt as though the ground had crumbled beneath her feet. She glanced at Dennis, who stood near the galley. He merely looked back at her silently, offering no reassurance. Following the officers, Miranda's mind was a maelstrom of fear. She knew her mistake had led her to this moment, and now she had to face the consequences without escape. Somewhere outside, Ava Carter had already exited the airport, her demeanor calm and assured. But Miranda understood clearly. The waves Ava had set in motion would continue to ripple far and wide. One day, after the flight, at the airline's headquarters, morning light streamed through the large glass windows, but the atmosphere in the meeting room remained cold. Ava Carter sat. At the head of the table, her demeanor calm yet exuding authority. The members of the board, people more accustomed to giving orders than receiving criticism, now sat silently, their anxious gazes fixed on her. On the large screen, footage of the incident on the flight played back. The scene of Miranda Scott asking Ava to leave first class was vividly clear, each word and expression revealing not just awkwardness but unconscious bias on Miranda's part. No one in the room spoke, but the shame was palpable. "Ms. Carter," one of the board members finally spoke, his voice filled with regret. "First and foremost, we want to extend our deepest apologies. This was clearly a grave mistake and completely unacceptable." Ava looked up, her sharp eyes sweeping across the room. "I acknowledge your apology," she began, her voice calm but unyielding. "But I need more than an apology. This mistake isn't just the carelessness of one employee. It reflects a systemic issue." A heavy silence hung over the room. Ava continued, her gaze unwavering. Passengers should not have to endure humiliation because of an employee's unconscious biases. This incident not only hurt me but also damaged the airline's reputation and the trust of your customers. If you want to fix this, you must address the root cause. Another board member spoke up, his tone almost pleading. "Ms. Carter, we completely agree. We are working on a comprehensive reform plan. We would greatly value your input on how we can improve." Ava nodded, but her expression remained stern. "Good. I want to see mandatory unconscious bias awareness training implemented for all employees, not just flight attendants but also ground staff, management, and the executive team. I want a transparent complaint resolution process to ensure incidents like this are handled swiftly and fairly. Lastly, I want to see an independent committee oversee compliance with these policies." The board members nodded vigorously, taking detailed notes. They knew Ava's demands were not mere suggestions. They were directives. Failure to act would jeopardize the airline's credibility, not just with the public, but also with a powerful shareholder like her. In a small room at the airport, Miranda Scott sat alone at a cold metal table. In front of her lay a suspension notice, along with a summons for an internal hearing. Outside the window, daylight streamed in, but all she felt was anxiety and regret. As she picked up the paper, Miranda's hands trembled. She read the words over and over, but the message was clear. She had made a mistake. What she had thought was a small decision based on instinct and personal feelings had now become the biggest stain on her career. The image of Ava Carter's piercing gaze as she left the plane still haunted Miranda. She recalled Ava's words, not loud, not publicly critical, but every word had cut deep, leaving Miranda unable to justify her actions. She had let unconscious bias dictate her behavior, and now she was paying the price. Miranda sighed, feeling as if everything around her was collapsing. A knock at the door broke the silence. Dennis, a longtime colleague, walked in. He looked at her with a mixture of sternness and sympathy. "Are you holding up?" he asked, his voice low. Miranda gave a weak smile, tears welling up but held back. I don't know, Dennis. I messed up so badly. Dennis sat across from her, folding his arms. I've told you before, Miranda. Bias is dangerous. It makes us believe we're right, even when we're completely wrong. Miranda lowered her head, saying nothing. Dennis continued. Your mistake was huge, but it's not irreparable. The question is, what will you do next? A week later, the airline held a press conference to announce sweeping reforms. They pledged to implement mandatory unconscious bias training for all staff. Additionally, they announced the establishment of an independent oversight committee and a new, transparent, and expedited complaint resolution process. While Ava Carter's name was not mentioned directly, every journalist and employee knew these changes stemmed from her strong intervention. The story of the flight had become a costly lesson, not just for the airline but for the entire industry. Miranda was terminated following her hearing. Losing the job she once took pride in, she fell into despair. But an unexpected letter from Ava Carter made her reconsider her perspective. Miranda, I believe everyone deserves a chance to make amends. Your actions hurt me, but they do not define you as a person. What matters is not the mistake itself, but how you choose to change afterward. Use this experience to become better. Miranda read the letter repeatedly, feeling a mix of shame and gratitude. It was an encouragement she hadn't anticipated, coming from the person she had wronged the most. She resolved not to let this mistake define her life. Months later, Miranda joined a nonprofit organization focused on unconscious bias education. There, she shared her story as a lesson for others. I made a mistake because I let bias blind me, she said during a seminar, but that mistake taught me that only by recognizing differences can we truly do what's right. As for Ava, she boarded another flight with the airline. When she stepped into first class, she noticed a marked difference. The attendants greeted her with genuine smiles, free of suspicion or judgment. Clara, the young flight attendant who had been kind to her during the previous flight, was now the cabin supervisor. Ava felt a quiet satisfaction seeing her efforts bear fruit. Thank you for your leadership, Clara said as she approached Ava. We're working hard to make things better. Ava smiled and nodded. Keep it up, Clara. Small changes can make a big difference. As the plane ascended, Ava looked out the window, taking in the vast sky and the endless white clouds. She knew her work was far from done. But with every step forward, she felt she was carving out new paths, not just for herself, but for others as well. In her mind, one thought rang clear. Change doesn't come from power, it comes from responsibility. A peaceful morning. Soft sunlight streamed through the large glass windows of Ava Carter's office, bathing the space in a golden glow. On her tidy desk, amidst a stack of documents and a few warm teacups, Ava was reviewing progress reports from the airline. Over the past few weeks, she had been working tirelessly to ensure that the promised reforms were not just empty words, but real actions. She read every line of the report, her eyes carefully scanning the sections on major changes. From bias awareness training programs and complaint reporting procedures to the establishment of an independent oversight committee. A faint smile crossed her lips as she noticed a note in the report. Bias awareness training successfully implemented, with 98% employee participation in the initial phase. It was an encouraging figure, but Ava knew that real change did not come from numbers alone. It stemmed from employees internalizing lessons through their actions. Ava set the report down, took a sip of tea, and gazed dreamily out the window. She hadn't imagined that the incident on the flight would lead to such a major turning point. What pleased her most was not the airline's apology, but the genuine commitment to systemic change. To her, fairness was never a gift meant for one person. It was a right for everyone. Across the city, Miranda Scott stepped into a small meeting room, holding a file folder. The room was nothing like the luxurious conference room she had grown accustomed to during her time with the airline. This was the office of a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping businesses and individuals eliminate workplace biases. Miranda, with her hair neatly tied back and her face bare of makeup, felt a rare sense of relief as she began her new job. After everything, she had found a way to make things right. Miranda's work at the organization wasn't just an act of redemption, but also a way for her to learn and grow. In the early days, she handled logistical tasks, organizing materials, and preparing for workshops. Gradually, she was given speaking roles, sharing her story. At first, Miranda struggled to stand in front of an audience and recount the biggest mistake of her career. But after a few attempts, she realized that her honesty resonated deeply with her listeners. One afternoon, Miranda stepped onto the stage at a large seminar, the spotlight shining directly on her. Standing before hundreds of attendees, Miranda took a deep breath, looked around the room, and began. "I used to think of myself as a professional and fair person, but in a matter of seconds, one biased decision shattered it all." Her voice was emotional yet steady. "My mistake didn't just hurt a passenger. It revealed a much bigger issue, unconscious bias I never thought I had." She recounted the entire incident on the flight, leaving out no details. "I judged a woman solely based on her simple appearance. I failed to realize that I had allowed societal biases to influence my thinking, and I was wrong." Miranda ended her speech with a heartfelt message. "My mistake taught me that fairness doesn't happen naturally. We have to learn, be aware, and take action. I've lost a lot to understand this, but I hope my story can help others avoid the same pitfalls." Her story was quoted in numerous articles, becoming a prime example of learning from failure. Miranda felt a sense of relief, knowing she was doing the right thing. A few months later, Ava prepared for a new flight. This time, she boarded the plane with a completely different feeling. At the check-in counter, the staff greeted her warmly. "Welcome, Mrs. Carter. We're honored to serve you today," the agent said, her eyes sparkling with respect. As Ava entered the first-class cabin, she noticed a significant change. Gone were the judgmental glances and skepticism. The flight attendants greeted her with genuine smiles and enthusiastic attitudes. The atmosphere in the cabin felt lighter, warmer. Ava settled into her seat, feeling gratified that the changes she had helped drive were beginning to take root. Clara, the young flight attendant who had shown her kindness on the previous flight, was now a cabin supervisor. Upon seeing Ava, Clara approached her with a radiant smile. "Mrs. Carter, it's so lovely to see you again. I hope you have a comfortable flight." Ava nodded, her smile gentle but encouraging. "Thank you, Clara. I'm so glad to see you in this role. You're proof that acts of kindness never go unnoticed." Clara's eyes sparkled with emotion. "It's all thanks to you. Thank you for inspiring us to be better." As the plane took off, Ava gazed out the window, her eyes reflecting contentment. The world below seemed smaller as she thought about the changes she had helped bring about. She knew there was still much work to be done, but every step forward held significance. After the flight, back at her office, Ava received an envelope from Miranda Scott. She opened the letter and read each line, feeling the sincerity in every word. Dear Mrs. Carter, your advice has changed my life. Thanks to your patience and compassion, I've found a new path to amend my mistakes. I can never erase what happened, but I'm committed to working so that others can avoid making the same mistakes I did. You were the one who helped me see the light when I was lost in the darkness. I will never forget that. Sincerely, Miranda Scott. Ava set the letter down, her heart filled with a quiet relief. She didn't feel triumphant or proud, just a sense of belief that change is possible with patience and determination. That night, Ava wrote in her journal, "Change doesn't just begin with awareness. It must be nurtured with persistence and faith in the goodness of people." The office lights gradually dimmed, but the stars above continued to shine. Ava knew her journey wasn't over, but the steps she had taken today had opened new roads for tomorrow. In the evening, the soft glow of warm lights illuminated Ava Carter's office. On her desk, amidst neatly arranged documents and a steaming cup of tea, her familiar journal lay open, a blank page waiting for new reflections. Ava took a sip of tea, her gaze drifting to the night sky outside the large window. The twinkling stars seemed to invite her to reflect on the long road she had traveled. The journey had started with what seemed like an ordinary flight, but had culminated in profound changes. Ava thought about how a small incident had spiraled into a grand opportunity to reshape perspectives and actions within a massive organization. The impact went beyond her personal scope. It became a testament to what resolve and integrity could achieve. Over the past months, Ava had fought not only for changes in the aviation industry, but also for changes in people's hearts. Clara, the young flight attendant with a sincere heart, had grown into a responsible leader. Miranda Scott, who once forced Ava to face injustice, had stepped up to own her mistakes and turn them into lessons for herself and others. A notification from her computer broke Ava's thoughts. She turned to the screen and saw a new email from the airline. The subject line was brief but meaningful. "Thank you for your leadership." Ava opened the email and read the message from the airline's CEO. "Dear Mrs. Carter, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude for your patience and determination. Thanks to you, we identified flaws in our system and learned how to improve. The training programs you recommended have been successfully implemented. More importantly, our staff has transformed their view of their roles, not just as service providers but as individuals who bring fairness and respect. Your story has not only changed how we work, but serves as a reminder that every passenger deserves to be treated with compassion. Thank you for not giving up, even when everything seemed against you. We look forward to continuing to learn from you." Ava sat silently, her eyes lingering on the final sentence. "Thank you for not giving up." She smiled, not out of pride, but with the satisfaction of knowing her efforts had made a difference. This email wasn't a destination, but a milestone showing that the journey toward reform had truly begun. She placed her hand on her journal and wrote a few lines. "Sometimes change doesn't come from grand gestures, but from consistency in small actions. A system only improves when those within it dare to face mistakes and correct them." Turning off the office lights, Ava stepped outside, the gentle night breeze refreshing her spirits. She got into the waiting car, and the driver greeted her with a warm smile and a nod. Inside the car, she picked up her phone and opened a new message from Miranda. "Dear Mrs. Carter, today I completed my first workshop as a keynote speaker. I shared my story, openly and honestly, hoping that my mistakes can help others avoid similar pitfalls. I don't know what the future holds, but I promise to continue walking the path you encouraged me to take. Thank you, not just for what you did for me, but for teaching me that true change begins within ourselves. I owe you so much, and I hope that one day I can do something worthy of your kindness. After reading the message, Ava's eyes softened, her heart filled with hope. Miranda, once a symbol of error, had now become proof of humanity's ability to rebuild. Ava closed her eyes, reminding herself that sometimes giving someone a chance can change an entire life. The car glided through brightly lit streets, bringing Ava home. In her heart was a rare peace, not because the work was done, but because she knew she had left a meaningful mark, a positive change, not just within an organization, but in the lives of those who crossed her path. Looking out the car window, she saw street lights stretching endlessly, like milestones on her purposeful journey. Ava understood that the journey toward change never truly ends. It is a series of unceasing steps, each one significant and necessary. And with her unwavering determination and compassionate heart, she would continue walking, spreading the light of fairness and humanity even further. Ava Carter had not only reclaimed justice for herself, but had sown seeds of change in a flawed system. She proved that perseverance, kindness, and belief in justice can bring about tremendous transformations. From what seemed like a minor action on a flight, Ava had helped not just an airline but also the people within it to reevaluate the values of respect, empathy, and responsibility. Miranda Scott, from being someone who made mistakes, had courageously faced her errors and found ways to rectify them. Her journey demonstrated that anyone can change, as long as they are willing to accept, learn, and act. This story goes beyond Ava and Miranda. It reminds us all that, in any circumstance, kindness, compassion, and determination to do the right thing have a power beyond imagination. Anyone can inspire change if they dare to stand for fairness and inclusion. If this story resonates with you, join us in spreading the values Ava Carter has persistently upheld. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more inspiring stories. Let's build a community where kindness and justice always come first. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.